Grand Canyon University, an affordable private Christian university, is one of the largest and fastest growing universities in the country, offering more than 270 programs online. In addition to federal grants and aid, GCU's online students received nearly $130 million in institutional scholarships in 2022. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu/myoffer to see the scholarships you may qualify for.
Clark said the reason you left without saying goodbye is because it was too unbearable for you. Personally, I think that's a load of crap.
Clark?
This is the guy I work with.
Maybe Clark's right.
You know my Richard. He's a pilot. He takes me up all the time.
Not like this.
I forgot how warm you are.
What do you hear?
Nothing.
I hear everything. You wrote that the world doesn't need a savior. But every day I hear people crying for one. I'm sorry I left you, Lois. I'll take you back now.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I am half of your host, Perry Constantine.
And as always, I am the other half, Derek Ferguson.
How you doing today, Derek?
I'm doing pretty good. Baking like a potato.
You got the heat wave over where you are too, huh?
It's another 100-degree day here. Well, it's like 90 something, but with the humidity, it feels like 100 degrees. So, so I'm baking like a potato.
Yeah, same here. The humidity in Kagoshima is absolutely off the charts. And yesterday, I'd only gone out for a little bit, right? I was in my car the whole, like, I was only out for like maybe outside of my car, outside of air conditioning for like maybe a total of 10 minutes, going to my class and then coming back, right? In that time, in that 10 minutes of being out in the sun, my clothes were completely soaked through by the time I got home.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this summer, in more ways than one, it is no joke.
Oh, God, no, absolutely not.
This summer is no joke, I'm telling you.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. So anyway, something else I found out is, did you see what's trending on Twitter this morning? Or today, I should say?
No, what I probably did, but refresh my memory.
Demon semen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I saw a screenshot from some news program saying, Trump again defends doctor who believes in demon semen. I'm like, did you ever believe you live in a reality where you'd seen a headline, President defends doctor who believes in demon semen?
I am reminded, I saw the comedian Louis Black. He was on some talk show, and he was asked, he said, well, what kind of comedy material can you make out of, this whole Trump thing, the Trump administration? Mm-hmm. And he said with a perfectly straight face, in all honesty, he said, there is no way possible I can make this shit any funnier than it already is. And, so he's right. Just when you think this thing can't get any more bizarre, it does. It's like 2020. This year, so help me, our grandchildren are going to be asking us, how do we survive 2020?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
They are. They can say, well, what was you doing during 2020? What did you do? What did you do to keep from losing your mind in 2020?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, and I went on Twitter when I was reading about this nut job yesterday, and I'm looking at some of her tweets, like one where she threatens Facebook to put her videos back up, or else God will destroy their servers.
Patricia was up at 4:00 in the morning watching YouTube videos of this woman. She said she couldn't stop watching. She said it's incredible. I said, really? She's like, yeah. She said, I couldn't stop watching these things. She said, this woman is out. She said, because apparently there are some videos where she comes out and she has a white lab coat, mm-hmm. and she's talking like a rational person. Mm-hmm. And then she has the other video she does where she's talking about the demon semen and the alien DNA
and the demonic dream sex and all that. And the vaccine that's going to stop people from being religious.
Yeah. So it's like she's a scare. But apparently the only thing that Trump cares about is that she endorses this stuff, the hydrochlorous, whatever.
Hydroxychloroquine, yeah.
Right, yeah. Apparently that's the only thing that he cares about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and she claims that she's cured a whole bunch of people. I mean, using this thing. And I said, okay, well, it's very simple. Just produce the people that you cured.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and everyone's asking her, well, where's your? And there have been doctors who have responded to her and be like, well, show us your data, right?
Yeah.
You've got this. Show us your data. Show us the results of the trials and everything. What control groups did you? They're asking all these questions, and her response is always do your own research.
Well, now I have to say you're full of shit.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm very sorry, but yeah,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to say you're full of shit.
Yeah, absolutely. But other than that, not much else is really going on. I mean, how can you compete with demon semen?
Really? Listen, enough said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Just as the great late Stan Lee said. But yeah, other than that, we're still just kind of growing along with baby days and stuff. We haven't found out the sex yet. That'll probably be like next month or the month after, the doctor said.
Let it be a surprise.
No, we want to know in advance. We don't want to be those people who's going to wait until the last minute, because we want to prepare, right? We don't want to have stuff like ready. We don't have to scramble to buy clothes for a kid at the last minute when we haven't known if it's going to be a boy or girl.
Well, that's true too. I mean, there's a financial consideration.
Yeah.
And I mean, knowing so you buy the right stuff. So,
exactly. Yeah. Also, it's so funny because when I told my fiance about that I asked her, do you want to find out the sex before the baby's born? Because I personally did, right? I wanted to know before, but I wanted to know what she felt. And she's like, well, yeah, of course. Like she thought it was like no question. She's like, of course. Why wouldn't you? I'm like, oh, well, in America there are some people who like to have it be a surprise. And she's like, that's so stupid.
Yeah, because listen, I mean, really, it is more practical to know before.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can prepare properly. Yeah. It is more practical.
Yeah. So we got a registry up on Amazon and stuff like that now, so people can go in and they can choose stuff to buy, and we can. And I thought what I thought would do is like the orders would be reserved or something, and they'd send it later. But apparently they start sending it right away. So like we've already got some of the stuff delivered to us.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Well, your house is gonna look like a warehouse.
Yeah,
your apartment is gonna look like a warehouse.
Yeah. Well, we are starting to look at some other places. Like there's some nice houses actually in our area that are for rent that are not that about the same or not that much more expensive than what we're paying now.
Oh, okay. Cool. I'm glad to hear that everything is going along fine.
Yeah, everything's going good. So yeah, hopefully things will continue going well, and hopefully people will buy all the stuff on our list, so we don't have to buy anything ourselves.
One can only hope that people will take the hint.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, hey, but just so you know, I got this. There's also, yeah.
Do not think, folks, that he is keeping you up to date on this baby. Just
no. I'm saying
he's a proud papa.
I'm saying give my ass money.
Yeah, word. Nothing wrong with a little creative. Listen, folks, if you've been enjoying these podcasts, and you want to show your appreciation,
baby needs a new pair of everything.
Yeah, word.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? When we were setting up the registry, I asked her, I'm like, can we put a PS5 on this? And she's like, what? No. I'm like, why not? And she's like, why were you putting PS5 on a baby registry? I'm like, because I want a PS5. And she's like,
why not?
She's like, it's stuff for the baby. I'm like, well, the baby can get entertained watching me play PS5.
And since you will be stuck in the house babysitting, you will need something, you'll need some entertainment, won't you?
Here's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the wife is going to be going out because, you're going to encourage her to go out and see her friends and socialize, which means you'll have to stay and hold down the fort.
Well, especially because the baby's due in January, and like February and March is off season for me for work because most of the classes are out of session, right? They're on their semester break at that time. So like I'm going to be staying home most of the time anyway. So I'm and you know what? The kid's not going to be awake the whole time, so I got to have something to keep me busy.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm sold. I agree with you.
And she's like, no. And I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Women, you can't.
Women, they don't, women just don't understand.
They don't understand what's important.
They don't have their priorities straight.
And just so nobody gets angry at us, sends us angry letters or something, we're just joking, obviously.
I don't care if they get mad. I'm a grown-ass man. That's what I want.
All right. Okay, so all that out of the way, we talked last week. We talked about a Bryan Singer movie that had that it was enjoyable but had some flaws. That was X-Men: Days of Future Past, and you decided that'd be a good segue to pick another movie that also is flawed by Bryan Singer, and that is Superman Returns from 2006.
And you hit it right on the head because, like you said, last week we were talking about, X-Men, Days of Future Past, which is an enjoyable movie, but it's seriously flawed. It's got its flaws, but it's an enjoyable movie to watch. And in the course of that, I had another movie picked, but then I said, oh, you know something? We should just jump right to another movie that fits that exact same criteria. It's an enjoyable movie, but it's seriously flawed, which is Superman Returns.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so for anyone who doesn't remember about this movie, Bryan Singer did something interesting with this because instead of doing a remake or a reboot, he went to Warner Brothers and he said, I want to do a sequel to Richard Donner's first two Superman movies. So that was surprising for a lot of people. Like nobody really expected someone to go that route because this was before like the trend of doing sequels to movies that came out like 20, 30 years ago. But now it did kind of start that trend because then you had like Stallone coming back to Rocky and Rambo and Schwarzenegger coming back to the Terminator and stuff like that. But
yeah. Nobody had ever. This was a radical kind of idea because everybody figured that he was going to make like a whole brand new version of Superman. This is going to be a brand new version. And he said, no. He said, I'm just going to ignore Superman 3, 4, and 5, and whatever.
Well, it was only 3 and 4. Yeah, they
Right,
never
3
actually got around to 5.
Right, 3 and 4, and I'm just going to take up right from Superman 2.
Yeah,
and
and this was a movie that had been in development hell for like at least 10 years.
Yeah.
And that goes all the way back to the infamous Kevin Smith stories about working with John Peters when they were planning to do Superman Lives. And guys, if you have not seen that, like, you got to go on YouTube and look up Kevin Smith, John Peters, and listen to him talk about his experiences working with the guy. It's like the best stand-up that's not even a stand-up.
Yeah, I have told people many times. Matter of fact, I even said it here, folks. This is Kevin Smith in telling that story. That's like Richard Pryor level humor.
Yeah,
it is hilarious. I can't recommend it highly enough. Go on YouTube and find it. Something else to find also, because at one time, Nicolas Cage was going to play Superman.
Yeah. And Tim Burton was going to direct it.
And there's a documentary movie, which also has Kevin Smith in it, where they're talking about the development of that particular thing. And what makes it so fascinating is that you actually see they have some film of Nicolas Cage being fitted in a Superman costume.
Yeah. And this is a really good documentary. It's called The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened.
Right, that's it.
Directed by John Schnepp. And yeah, it's a really cool movie. Like, we're gonna have to cover that at some point as well.
Yeah, definitely we're gonna have to cover that. Because it's, you know what? Watching it, you say to yourself, well, you know what? I can't quite buy Nicolas Cage as Superman, but yeah, I'd watch the hell out of that movie if they made it.
Oh, yeah. Like, that's what I kept thinking the whole thought after I finished watching that documentary. And I've seen it like twice now, that documentary. And both times after watching it, I couldn't help but think, you know what? That movie would have been absolute dog shit. Like, it would have been a total train wreck, but I still want to see it.
Yeah. I still would have. Matter of fact, I would have paid money drove and burnt up gas to go see that movie.
Yeah.
Even though, like you said, I know that would have been dog shit. But hey.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So now, what were your feelings when this movie came out? Because you and I both, we gushed in our first episode way back when about how much Superman the movie, how important that was to us, how much it still resonates with us, all these years later. So, like, my attitude going into this was, I'm glad they're doing another, like, basically rebooting Superman 3. Like, that was my attitude towards them, because they're, instead of trying to distance themselves, because they spent so long trying to distance themselves from the Christopher Reeves movies when they were making these other, when they were trying these other attempts. Like, there was the Tim Burton version. There's also one that J.J. Abrams worked on where it was going to have like Kryptonian kung fu or something, and Lex Luthor was going to be a CIA agent who was secretly a Kryptonian, and all sorts of, like, basically trying to mix in like Matrix elements and surprise twists into it and all that kind of crap.
Yeah. Like you said, every other director and writer that they brought on to do a new Superman movie seemed determined to take it as far away from the Christopher Reeve version of Superman as possible. Now, what makes our man Bryan Singer so different is that he was not interested in that at all, because he worships Superman the movie.
Right.
He loves that movie the way baby loves his rattle.
Well, apparently, Kevin, I don't know if this, I haven't actually seen or read this interview, but this is something I heard like secondhand from someone. So if I'm wrong about this, someone can correct me. But apparently Kevin Spacey said that when they were making Usual Suspects, Bryan Singer was going around telling anyone who would listen about his idea for remaking Superman 3.
Yeah, yeah.
So
apparently this was a dream project of his for a long time to do a Superman movie.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, having said that, let me just say this. You can love something so much that love will actually get in the way of what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is my feeling with Superman Returns, in that Bryan Singer loved Richard Donner's vision of Superman too much.
Yeah.
To the extent where that he could not have his own vision of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just had to do, he worked his moneymaker off to recreate his vision to the point where what we have here in a weird way is more or less a remake of Superman the movie.
Yes, yeah. It's a lot like, it reminds me a lot of The Force Awakens in that way.
Yeah.
Because Force Awakens is the exact same thing, right? It's basically a remake / reboot of the first Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it is. It is. Much as I like The Force Awakens, it's A New Hope.
Right, it is. It totally is. Like, the mysterious the mysterious hero in the desert who is naturally force powerful. Even like the time when they meet Han and Chewie and they run across them, it's still like the exact same point, percentage wise of the movie, that Ben and Luke meet Han and Chewie in Mos Eisley.
Yeah,
and even down to a planet-killing weapon. I mean, it's just all right there.
They had, as a matter of fact, they even have a scene in there where they're talking about how to blow up Star Killer Base. And even Han Solo says, wait, how many of these damn things do we have to blow up?
And also, you got the old mentor being struck down by the villain.
Yeah, exactly.
And
you've got the robot with the secret message that he's got to deliver. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Everything. It's like, the entire time I'm watching, I'm like, this seems a lot like A New Hope. And after I was done watching, I'm like, that was basically A New Hope.
Yeah. And this movie, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of scenes in here. There's a lot of things. I do give Singer credit in that he does try to do some things that are different. And I like. Even though I don't like Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane, I feel she's the most boring Lois Lane I've ever seen in movies or TV. But I like how he tried to do something different with their relationship and show that she can fall in love with somebody other than Superman.
Yeah, and I'm glad he also avoided the typical route that would happen in this movie, where either Richard White, played by James Marsden, would be a total dick. And he's a great guy, right? And he gets along, like there's no friction between like him and Clark or him and Superman, right? They get along perfectly fine. Him and Clark work together to try to find out where Lois disappeared to and all that.
They have a mature relationship. They're two adult men. They're two adult men. They don't act like high school guys fighting over the cheerleader.
Right, and also because this is one of the biggest failings I thought of Spider-Man 2. Right? When at the end of it, because you have John Jameson, who's such a stand-up guy in that movie, right? Even down to him saying, like, well, how come you're not inviting your friend Peter Parker to the wedding, right? And then at the end of the movie, she leaves him at the altar, right? And then runs back to Peter Parker, who's been a dick the whole movie. But like he's been trying, and he's been trying to get her to leave John and come with him, like when he's reciting her poetry and that really cringeworthy scene at the party, and then she runs back to his house in a wedding dress, leaving this other nice guy who's an astronaut at the altar. And there's none of that in this movie. Like, Lois makes a clear decision to be with to be with Richard and to, you know, stay true to with Richard. And you see that moment, I realized it when I was rewatching it, is that moment is on when they go back, when they're on the roof. Right?
Yeah.
And he sets her down and then they almost kiss, but I noticed they both stop.
Right.
And then, you know, he pulls away from her and she looks like she's about to say anything. And he gives her this look like, no, you don't have to say anything else.
Yeah.
And at that moment, he's pretty much accepted that their relationship is over.
This is one of the things. Matter of fact, this is like probably the main thing that Singer gets right in this movie: the progression of the relationship between Superman, Clark, and Lois.
Yeah,
you know, in that, you know, this is a very mature. Matter of fact, this is probably the most mature relationship between Superman and Lois we've seen in any of the movies.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, I only wish, like I said, that we had like another actress, because I don't know, Kate Bosworth does nothing for me as Lois.
You know what? There's some. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So my thing is, like, I see where you're coming from. I see where a lot of people are coming from. I see some flashes of it in her, like when she's grilling the PR rep on the shuttle plane, like. And like, you know, and like she's being very tenacious when she's like, there are moments there, but the problem is I think it's just like her role is not written very well, and Singer just didn't really give her very good direction.
Okay.
And I noticed that's as I'm looking back and I'm thinking about his movies, that seems to be kind of a trend with his movies. Like his the female characters in this movie tend to be very underwritten. They tend not to have a whole lot to do in these movies, or when they are the focus, like, you know, in you know, say like Days of Future Past or Apocalypse with Mystique, they're very badly done.
Oh, they either like swing one way or the other.
Yeah. So he doesn't really have a good handle on female characters. He doesn't seem to really know how to work with female actors. Like, and you look at, I mean, you know, you look at most of his movies, it's mostly male dominated casts.
But because that PR woman that's on the plane was played by Peter Wilson. Now, I would have liked to see her play Lois Lane. She would have been a memorable Lois Lane. But again, and I've had discussions with people about this movie and about how Lois Lane, you know, she's not as, you know, to me, she's not as energetic as Lois Lane's been portrayed in other movies. And they tell me, well, that's because it's 5 years on and, you know, she's got a kid, so she's a little bit more grounded now. And so I say, you know something? Okay, on that basis, I can go for that, because that is what happens sometimes with women. You know, they have a child and yeah, they do become more grounded. They become more responsible. So she's not like the flighty Lois Lane anymore that can just drop off and, you know, go around the world on, you know, on some kind of assignment. So yeah, you know, I'll go with it. I don't buy it completely, but I understand the argument.
No, yeah, there are definite issues with how her character is portrayed in the movie, and I don't want to put it all on Kate Bosworth, because I think she was given this material. She's, you know, pretty inexperienced actress at this point in her career. Like,
well, she works with what she's got. I mean, she can only work with what they give her. So yeah.
Right. I mean, like, what had she really been in before this? She was in, you know, her biggest thing was Beyond the Sea with, who's Kevin Spacey? Yeah, Kevin Spacey was also in that too. That was like her biggest role. Everything else, like, she had very, like, you know, small parts before that. So, like, I mean, she wasn't really at a place in her career. And also, like, they went with someone way too young for what this role calls for, because I can't picture her being a seasoned reporter 5 years ago, because she looks like she's like what, 24, 25 in this movie. So like 5 years ago, she would have still been in high school.
And see, also, here's the thing. Okay, if we go by what, you know, Singer says, okay, and this is a sequel to the first two movies. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we're supposed to believe this is the same character as played by Margot Kidder, and right. I can't see it.
Yeah.
You know, I can't see her being. Whereas there's some other characters I look at them. Some of them I look at them and I say, yeah, okay. I can buy this as being the same character. I can buy this as being the same character. But other characters, I look at them and I say, nah, I can't buy it. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's the number one. That nah.
All right, now we got to talk about Brandon Routh as Superman, because he took a lot of shit for this movie, and I definitely think it was like Kate Bosworth. Yeah, she deserves some of the criticism she got, but Brandon Routh didn't deserve a single speck of ink that was wasted on criticism of his performance.
Brandon Routh, this was his first major motion picture. I mean, this was a major motion picture.
Yeah.
You know, so he's playing Superman, an iconic character. And what Singer apparently wanted him to do, he did not want him to play Superman his way. He wanted him to be Christopher Reeve.
Right.
As Superman and Clark Kent. And of course, he's an inexperienced actor. This is the first big role. He don't want to fuck it up. So he goes along with it. So, yeah. So I don't blame Brandon Routh. Matter of fact, he does a damn good job of being Christopher Reeve.
He does. Yeah, he does. He does a very good job.
Yeah.
And now we finally did get to see his Superman in Crisis on Infinite Earth. So we got to see what he would have done with that. And it's too bad that Singer told him to do a Christopher Reeve impression, because Brandon Routh's Superman, I would have loved to see that movie.
I would have loved to see that too.
I'd still love to see that movie. I'd still love to see that movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's not that old that he can't still, do a Superman movie.
Well, no, I mean, absolutely not. And plus, now he's done with Legends. There's who knows what's going on with Henry Cavill. You've got Tyler Hoechlin. He's already going to be doing Superman on TV. So give Brandon Routh a Superman movie then. Yeah,
give him a movie. Why not? I mean, the guy deserves it.
He does, definitely.
I mean, because he does a good job in this movie. Now, after watching it, because I watched it yesterday, and I haven't seen it for a few years, and having more years now, having seen him on other things, and so I think I could be a little bit more objective about his performance. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, you know something? This guy really had to sublimate a lot of probably what he wanted to do in order to give Singer what he wanted. And there's a kind of...
No, go ahead.
But there's a kind of genius in the way that he does that, in the way that he gives him Christopher Reeve. There's a kind of genius in that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's one thing he's able to do in this movie that I noticed this last time around is he plays Superman as Superman, right? Like, this is Superman. This is who Superman is. But there is like this subtext of melancholy in his performance.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't overcome him, right? It's not like, like the Spider-Man woe is me thing, but there's just like a hint of it there. And he does a really good job of bringing that out at certain moments. Like when they're up in the air and he's talking about how he can hear everything, and how he says, you say that you wrote that the world doesn't need a savior, but every day I hear people crying out for one. And then when he says, and then he apologizes to her. Right? He just has that hint of melancholy in his voice, and it works really well.
And there's a look that he has when he comes back to Daily Planet, and he comes back, and except for Jimmy Olsen, nobody's really happy to see him. Nobody cares that he's back.
Yeah.
Not even Perry White. No. And there's a scene where he takes his suitcases and he sticks them like in this room, and he sees this cutout of Perry White smiling and everything like that, and he looks at that, and he turns around and he looks in, and he looks back, and he looks into the city room, and there's this look on his face like, I didn't expect this shit. I thought that, maybe somebody. But no, and the thing that really and this is kind of mean-spirited, people actually they don't like Clark in this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of people Clark Kent, really, whereas in the other movies, Clark Kent is this bumbling guy that people know he's there, but
Right.
it's like, yeah, well, that's just Clark.
But yeah, but they're polite to him though, right?
Yeah,
Nobody's a dick to him.
yeah. I mean, in this movie, you got people that are just, they look at him like there's one guy that says, Clark, Perry says he wants you now. And it's like,
Yeah.
guy's got a serious attitude.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what the hell did Clark? And it's so contrary to how Brandon Routh plays Clark Kent that it just doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
Because the only exception is, Perry White's kind of dismissive in the beginning when Clark comes back. But other than that, he's, it's just like Clark's just kind of there. Like when he comes into the office asking about, how he can help with Lois. And, and Perry, is deferential, is respectful for him there. But, and then also, Richard is very respectful of Clark. He's very nice to him, right? Like when he meets him, he's like, oh, it's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. And, Clark looks like he's like, oh wow, someone besides Jimmy missed me. Lois must. And then he says, yeah, right. Jimmy won't shut up about you.
Yeah. Because it's like, okay, well, nobody cares, that he's back.
Yeah, and Lois is kind of a bitch to him too, as well.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
There's that first one. She's being nice to him. They have that like kind of awkward hug thing when they see each other, and she says,
they don't know if they should hug or kiss or shake hands or
right. And then she says and she's like, well, tell me all about your trip, and then she just kind of drops it, and then later when they talk, like she's just very dismissive and rude to him for no reason.
Right. Yeah. Very rude. Yeah. Very rude, which is like, to me, goes contrary to, the whole relationship that they have, because her and Clark are supposed to have like this rivalry, for to be the best reporter, everything like that. And I mean, they're friends.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't seen the guy for 5 years, which also is another thing that I said, something, the people in Metropolis can't be this stupid that Clark Kent comes back after 5 years. The exact day he comes back, Superman decides to come back too. Even the kid picked up on it. He looks at Clark Kent and he turns his head and he looks at the TV and he said, oh shit.
Well, there is one scene I really liked, is that that scene when Richard and Lois are talking about Superman, and Richard notices Clark, and he's like, hey Lois, how tall would you say Clark is? And she's like, about like 6'3", 6'4", and it's like, what, like 225 times weight? And they're both kind of looking at him. And then he looks up and he kind of looks around, kind of dumbfoundedly, and then they just laugh, right? Because that's exactly how it goes with Clark and Superman, right? That's part of it's his whole persona he creates for Clark Kent that makes you realize that even if he might resemble Superman, like there's no way you can think he's Superman.
Yeah. Well, that's all. Well, as we talked about in Superman, Christopher Reeve was so brilliant in that, because we had talked about that one scene that for me is the best special effect in the whole movie, where you actually see him transform.
Exactly. Yeah.
Superman right in front of your eyes. And when he does that, you understand how Clark Kent gets away with it. Where people just say, well, it's just a pair of glasses. No, it's not the glasses.
No, yeah, exactly.
Christopher Reeve shows you in that one scene how he pulls it off.
Right. And he purposely wears suits that are like a size too big, so it looks like he's physically small. Like, it's all about creating an illusion with his character.
I've always wondered if there was a story to be written where a Clark Kent, before he embarks on his career as a reporter, he goes to the actor studio in New York and he studies to be an actor.
I don't know if there was kind of a reference in Mark Waid did a new version of Superman's origin. It was called Superman Birthright. This was in the early 2000s, I think, I want to say. And in Birthright, when they're preparing him to be Superman, there is this scene when Martha's telling him, like, your father and I once saw this play where it was about these twin brothers. And at the end of the play, you find out that the brothers were actually played by the same actor. She's like, but he made each performance different. So you thought you were able to believe that they were two different people. And she's like, so study that craft, like find books on acting and study that craft. So she tells him to do this, and it's clear that he does from the way he acts in the book, but it never shows him like actually going to study or anything like that. So I think that's probably the closest thing I've ever seen, at least.
Because I've always thought, that Clark Kent would have to be a hell of a good actor.
Oh yeah,
to pull off being Clark Kent, so that people will look at him and they might say, "Yeah, well, he kind of looks like Superman, but not Clark. Nah, he couldn't.
Exactly. Yeah,
couldn't be him."
Also,
but
I love
how that little kid Jason, how he picks up on it.
Yeah,
he just gives this look, and he just looks at the TV, and he looks back at Clark, and Clark is looking down at him like, "Shut up, kid! Don't say nothing."
One of the things I like too about his Clark Kent is that his might be like my ideal version of Clark Kent, because he's just a total wallflower, somebody you don't even notice is there. So it's totally believable how someone like him could basically hide in plain sight as Superman, and even why he'd be a good reporter, because you never know he's there, so you never notice that he's standing in the room as you're talking about a criminal conspiracy or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought he does.
It's like you would turn around and say, "Oh shit, Kent. Well, how long have you been there?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think he does a really good job of that, and it's an underrated aspect of this movie that I wish we'd gotten to see more of. And I love that scene when Lois comes back down from the roof after meeting Superman, and Clark's already back there, and he's like stuffing the burrito in his mouth.
Yeah. I always love it when they do them. I always love those scenes that they have where he changes into Superman and he takes Lois someplace, and then she comes back and her head is still all in the clouds and everything like that, and he shows up as Clark and he just further discombobulates.
Yeah,
he messes with her head. It's great. I just want to mention real quick before I forget that one of the pleasures I got out of this movie was that it had the woman who, after Margot Kidder, is my favorite Lois Lane, Noel Neill, who played Lois Lane in the TV series, The Adventures of Superman from the 1950s. She's the old woman whose fortune is stolen by Lex Luthor.
Right.
At the beginning of the movie. And the original Jimmy Olsen, Jack Larson, plays the bartender.
Yeah. And Noel Neill, wasn't she also in some of the serials as well?
Yes, she was. She was in the serials.
Yeah. And I love that Jack Larson is still wearing the bow tie.
Yeah, he's still wearing the bow tie. Yeah. They had a nice little scene in there when, after Superman saves the airplane, which is probably the best scene in the whole movie, and the two Jimmy Olsens, they cut to the two of them and they're hugging.
Yeah.
And well, you know what? I don't know. Stuff like that kind of gives me like a nice warm feeling. I like,
Well, now that you mentioned that, it's a good transition to talking about Sam Huntington as Jimmy Olsen, and who I think he does a great job as Jimmy. Like, he's a little bit too over-exuberant when it comes to Clark. I think it's kind of like, I never realized you were never like this close to him in the previous movies.
Yeah, it's kind of like a puppy dog kind of worship.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah, it is. It's like, like, oh my God, oh Clark, oh man, I'm so glad to see you back. Oh, here, sit here, have a pork chop. Hold on, I'm gonna get you. Yeah, it's a little over the top. It's a little too much. Okay, yeah, I realize you're glad to see the guy, but dial it down a bit, bro.
Exactly. Yeah. And but otherwise, I thought he did a really good job. He really kind of captured what Jimmy's all about.
Well, I like Jimmy Olsen should always have that exuberance, that youthful, exuberance. And I've always seen that him and Clark have more like, some people say, oh yeah, well, it's a father-son kind of thing. No, it's not. It's like a brother kind of thing. Because they're not really that far apart in age. At least I think so. They're not, they're not supposed to be that far apart in age.
Well, in the he's Clark's best friend. Like, that's why in the comics he was in the comics when he married him and Lois got married. Jimmy was his best man.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's not like Yeah, I mean, what's his name? Perry White is more like a father figure.
Exactly.
For Jimmy Olsen. Clark is like his older brother.
Mm-hmm. I also like that
Clark and Lois, they're like his older brother and his older sister.
Yeah. And also I like that, when Clark finds out that Lois is, basically engaged, so it's like a prolonged engagement, and she's got a kid, and he looks distraught, and Jimmy's like, hey, you want to go get a beer? And I like that little scene of them together in the bar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And and for anyone else who, because I did see some complaints about this, Clark Kent shouldn't be drinking beer, that's such a bad role model. It's like he's Superman. He could drink like an entire keg and he wouldn't feel a thing.
Yeah, but why wouldn't he want to drink a beer?
I know. It's like, I hate when I've seen people get uptight about that kind of stuff. Like, oh, well, superheroes should never drink it. I'm like, just shut up.
Of course they should.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I'm sure that Batman enjoys champagne once in a while after he finished whooping the Joker's ass.
Well, Batman, I think I would see as not, just because like he's so, in that mode. Like he's so devoted to the mission, and like that's what, like there's that part in Dark Knight Returns when Gordon says to Bruce, like, you had us going for years, sipping your ginger ale, making us all think it was champagne.
Oh yeah.
And there's also that scene in if you remember in The Dark Knight when he's at the fundraiser for Harvey Dent, like he walks out to the balcony, he's got the glass of champagne, he just spills the champagne over the edge.
Yeah. And I believe that Gordon tells him because they go out for dinner or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he's drinking and like he's throwing them back one after another. Gordon said, "You're making up for lost time." I said,
"Exactly, yeah."
But
other characters, I totally see them, having a drink.
That is a good point you make, because Bruce Wayne, he's such a control freak that he would not want to take a substance into his body that would alter his mood or his consciousness
or impair his abilities in any way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So he probably wouldn't drink, but everybody else, like, guys like Green Lantern and Green Arrow, I see them for going out for beers every weekend.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. All right. And
no, Superman, especially Superman with his metabolism, he probably can't get drunk anyway.
No, it's like that scene in The Flash in the TV show, right? When Barry downs like a whole bunch of shots and he tells, Cisco and Caitlin, he's like, I can't get drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I physically can't. My metabolism works too fast.
Yeah, it burns it up too fast. Yeah.
And so that one time when they want to give him a celebratory drink, Cisco has to make him like this special strong, like 500 proof alcohol to make him feel anything.
Alcohol. Yeah.
Huntington does a really good job, I thought. And you also mentioned Perry White, and that, played by the great Frank Langella, who's also a good addition, but he doesn't have a lot to do, is the problem.
And he's not bombastic.
No.
Frank Langella is dignified and distinguished.
Yeah.
Perry White is not dignified and distinguished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's a very bombastic, although I have to say, the moment where he says Great Caesar's ghost, he delivers it like it's a prayer. It's a wonderful moment where he says, when Superman, he catches the globe, planet globe that's falling. And it's falling on Perry White, and Superman catches it. Mm-hmm. And Frank Langella, he's looking up, and the camera is right on his face, and he says, Great Caesar's ghost. And the way he says it, you just want to put your hands together and bow your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, speaking of the Daily Planet, and we were just talking about this in our Facebook group, I love how they designed the building.
Oh my God, it's gorgeous. It's Art Deco. It's Baroque. It has its own unique. Just like I was saying, the Daily Planet is just as much a character in the Superman legend as Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen and Clark, and it should have its own unique look.
Yeah,
because all of these characters, their lives revolve around the Daily Planet.
Right, and that's something that the Superman the movie, I don't recall the Daily Planet building is really standing out outside of the globe.
Are we talking about the Christopher Reeve movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, no. Yeah, it didn't really have it did if you're from New York, because the they used the Daily News. It stood in
Right. Yeah.
for, so if you've ever been to the Daily News building, which I have when I was taking up journalism and they took us on a trip there, it's, at one time it was like a New York kind of landmark. But I like this look of the Daily Planet much better because you see the city room, and even though you see computers and stuff like that, it's still, to me, it still looks like it could be in the 1940s.
Yeah, exactly. Like as I was watching the movie, I was thinking, you know what? When you think of Metropolis, it should be like Art Deco style.
Yeah.
And when you think of Gotham, it should be like Gothic style.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that I feel like some of the movies kind of got away from. Like you had as much as I love the Nolan movies, well, at least the first two, and as much as I love the fact that, my hometown is used heavily, especially in The Dark Knight, it was all filmed in Chicago. Like, it just doesn't feel like Gotham.
Nah, it doesn't. It doesn't. Which is why when we were talking about the Tim Burton movies, that's why I think they work so well for me, because Gotham, okay, that's how Gotham should look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Batman works best in an environment that's his. He doesn't work good in an environment where the city looks real.
Mm-hmm.
Gotham City shouldn't look real.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, Metropolis shouldn't look that really. Metropolis should look too clean. It should look like, what's the best thing I can put? Have you ever been to Universal down in Florida?
Yeah.
Okay, you see how ultra clean it is?
Mm-hmm.
How everything is nice and bright and clean and shiny? That's how Metropolis should look all the time.
Yeah.
Metropolis should look like it never gets dirty.
Yeah. Oh, actually, here's an interesting thing. Just I'm just looking at I got the trivia page open.
Okay.
Do you know who was originally supposed to play Perry White in this movie? Like, Frank Langella was not the first choice. Hugh Laurie was cast.
Okay, bingo.
Like, he would have done a really good job.
He can play bombastic.
Yeah. But there was but because House became really popular, there were scheduling conflicts, so then he had to back out, and then Frank Langella was cast.
There was not one scene where Frank Langella, where he throws open his door and screams, "Can't get in here!"
Yeah.
Or Lane, get in here. That's Perry White. Frank Langella doesn't have a cigar in the corner of his mug.
Mm-hmm.
Like J. Jonah Jameson and what was the other Perry White from the movies? What was his name? Jackie
Cooper. Yeah,
Jackie Cooper.
Yeah. And then you had Lane Smith on Lois and Clark.
Yeah,
who was kind of like a Kentucky Fried version of Perry White.
Yeah, that was a really odd.
We don't see. I liked Lane Smith. Like, I thought he did a good job, but I think they tried to play. They played up that Elvis shit way too much.
Yeah, that was the thing. Yeah. They made that instead of Great Caesar's Ghost. He said what? Great Elvis.
Great Shades of Elvis. Yeah.
Great Shades of Elvis. Yeah. They kind of like went a little bit too far with the Elvis thing. Although, you know what? I understand why they did that, because modern audiences probably would. A lot of them, nobody would understand why he says Great Caesar's Ghost. Well,
I wouldn't mind him saying Great Shades, but they made him so obsessed with Elvis that it became ridiculous.
Yeah. They took that one hook.
I mean, like,
it's not even a character trait.
It doesn't even make any sense, because, like, Perry White, he says Great Caesar's Ghost, but he's not like a Roman file, right? He doesn't have like all this Caesar stuff in his office or anything. He's not dressing up as Caesar or any of that kind of shit. So it's just like, why would you think that? Why would you do that with Lane Smith to make him like, embarrass him like that?
Matter of fact, in the 1950s, The Adventures of Superman, the TV series, I don't remember what it was, but there is an episode called Great Caesar's Ghost where it's explained why Perry White says that.
Oh, really? What is, do you remember what the explanation was?
I don't remember. I do remember that he believes he's being haunted by the spirit of Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar says to him at one point, "Well, you summoned me up because you keep calling me. You keep saying Great Caesar's Ghost, so here I am."
That's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and I know that at one point in the show, I believe it's at the end, there is explanation. Somebody, either Clark or Jimmy, asked him, well, why do you say Great Caesar's gone? And he, see, now I got to go on YouTube and I got to find the episode.
Oh.
Because I know that there is an explanation why he says it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And now I want to talk about Richard White, James Marsden. Like, I totally understand why, because so when this movie was in production, when Bryan Singer was starting to get casting and all that, this is when Fox, got their panties in a twist. Because, as soon as they found out that Singer was going to do Superman Returns, they went to him like, well, what the fuck? You're supposed to be doing our third X-Men movie. And he's like, well, you guys told me you weren't even sure when you're going to do it or when you want to, or if you will do it at all. So I got offered this and I decided to take it. And Fox like, no, we're doing it. And we're going to do it without you now. So fuck you. And Bryan Singer's like, why don't you just wait until I finish this movie, then I'll go back and do it. He's like, no, we're doing it now. We're going to have it come out before Superman Returns so we can beat you at the box office. And then
very childish.
Very childish. And then it started this like casting war because, Singer went to the actors he's worked with before, right? So he went to Marsden, he went to Famke Janssen, he went to Shawn Ashmore, and he asked them if they were going to be in Superman Returns.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he wanted Ashmore for Jimmy Olsen. Not sure what he wanted Jansen for. I doubt it was Lois Lane, but maybe it was for like the Kitty Kowalski role. That would probably make sense.
Yeah.
Maybe. That's just speculation on my part. But you know what? They had agreed to do The Last Stand, so they had to back out. But Marsden, he's like, well, you didn't give me shit to do in the first two movies. Singer filmed more scenes with me in the first two movies, and you deleted them from the movie. And now Singer's offering me a bigger part, so I'm gonna go be in Superman Returns.
He had more to do in Superman Returns than he did in those X-Men movies.
Yeah. And you know what? Something else I noticed as I'm watching him is he could have been Superman.
You know what? You took the words right out of my mouth. I was just getting ready to say that too. That I said, you know what? I'm watching it and I'm looking at him. I said, damn, you know what? James Marsden could have been a pretty damn good Superman as well.
Yeah. I mean, he plays this really stand-up guy. He's got blue eyes naturally. He's got the right build. He's got the right physique. He's got the right demeanor and personality. Yeah, he would have made a great Superman. He
would have been pretty good at that. I'm looking at it, and I was watching it. I said, yeah, you know what? This guy could have been Superman himself.
And I kind of
which also explains why Lois fell in love with him.
I was literally just about to say that. So you took the words right out of my mouth. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it makes sense why Lois fell in love. He's Superman without the superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah. Although then you got but then you got Jason White, who he doesn't look like either of them.
No.
See, are we sure that Lois didn't have something going on with Jimmy on the side?
And you know something? That is something, and I've said this before. I hate this in movies when they give us characters that are supposed to be related, father and son, brother and sister, mother and daughter, whatever, and they look nothing alike. They don't look anything like each other. This kid, he doesn't look anything. Although I do like this kid a lot because they let him be a kid.
Yeah, I remember reading Roger Ebert's review of this movie, and he was complaining about Jason in it, saying like, well, why, if they're going to give Superman a kid sidekick, why can't they give him kind of like one of the sassy kids from like Spy Kids or something like that? I'm like, that would have been so fucking stupid.
No.
I'm glad. Yeah, he's a kid.
I like the fact that he's just a normal, regular kid.
Yeah. He acts just like a regular, normal kid, right?
He acts just like a regular kid.
Right? He says things just come off the top of his head that a kid would say. Like, when he meets Clark and Clark says, oh, I'm an old friend of your mom's. She's like, oh, she never mentioned you.
Yeah. No, she knows anything about it.
Or when he meets Lex Luthor and he just says, you're bald.
And it's really touching when him and Lois, they go to the hospital to see Superman, who has, of course, pushed the kryptonite continent into outer space, and he goes see him, and they just look at him, and the kid just simply says, "I like him."
Yeah, he's like, "I hope he gets better. I like him." Yeah.
Oh, that's if that doesn't touch you, you don't have no heart. Because that's what kids are. They say, so kids say exactly what they feel. There's an old saying, if you want to know the truth, go ask a kid.
Yeah.
Because they'll tell you. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I thought he did. It's just that whole storyline is just like problematic in a lot of different ways.
Oh boy, yeah. People have a lot of Okay, you want to hear my problem with it first, and then we're gonna let you get on your problem.
Okay.
I've heard people for years complain about this, talking about, this is a horrible movie because Superman, he's a deadbeat dad. How do you figure? Wait a minute. Where do you get that from?
Yeah.
He did not know she was pregnant.
Right.
He left the planet not knowing she was pregnant. Well, he had sex with her. He should have known. How would he know when he kissed her and he made her forget everything that happened, that they had sex?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I want to see the part where Lois ended up pregnant. She said, "How did this shit happen?"
Yeah. So there are a few things about, like, I agree with you totally about the deadbeat dad thing. It doesn't make any sense. And like, you know what? Well, he had sex with. Well, you know, I've had sex with a bunch of women too. I never expected any of them would think I have gotten pregnant. None of them ever told me anything about it. So, as far as I know, I don't have any love children running around out there.
Right. I mean, and speaking for myself, I know I have friends who, they've had women they had relationships with, years ago, come back in their life and say, "Oh, well, you've got a son and you've got a daughter." Yeah. And they freaked out because they said, "Well, how come you never told me?"
Yeah.
And the women, and the women said, "Well, I slept with you, but I didn't want to be married to you or nothing like that. I didn't want to, for people don't want to believe shit like that happens, but it does happen."
Yeah, it does. And so I the deadbeat dad thing never made any sense to me.
No,
but the continuity is problematic, and it does, like you mentioned, the amnesia kiss.
Yeah.
When Lois finds out that she's pregnant, right? Maybe she dated Richard right after, and so she thinks Richard's the actual biological father. But when Jason pushes that piano across the room, and then she realizes he's got superpowers, like at that moment, she'd be wondering, when did I fuck Superman?
Bingo.
And that creates an issue. That creates some issues.
Yeah.
Now the problem is that also the 5-year timeline doesn't quite work, because did she immediately start dating Richard like as soon as Superman disappeared? Like
any way you look at it, okay, it goes back to what you were saying. Either Lois was doing a lot of fooling around that we didn't know about and Superman didn't know about, nobody knew about. Or, because when she popped up pregnant, shouldn't she have freaked out and said, "Well, listen, I know my name is not Mary Magdalene, so how did I get pregnant?"
Yeah.
The timeline just doesn't, the timing don't jive.
Yeah, and also there's another issue too, is that, and part of this is because Bryan Singer was never exactly clear on the timeline. He says it's a loose follow-up, but it doesn't follow those movies' continuity strictly.
No.
So, and that it creates a whole lot of questions about what exactly is going on here. And like,
first of all, the Superman that I know, or that I think I know, Superman I know would never abandon Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. I don't see that he just packs up and says, "Well, I'm just going to go see if Krypton is still there." Why?
Now, here's the thing.
It's not there.
But here's an unintentional tie-in to that, right? So in Supergirl, in 1984 Supergirl, there's a radio announcer report that Superman is off in space. So there is that kind of that little connection there. So maybe he puts Supergirl in charge of taking care of stuff while he was gone.
Okay. Well,
and I could see that.
And even though we don't see them, we can just take it as a given that there are other superheroes. So he didn't.
Well, they do reference Gotham as well, and Jason also is wearing Aquaman pajamas.
Yeah. So we can take it as a given that there are other superheroes around, so he doesn't feel like he's leaving the planet completely unprotected. But still, I don't see Superman just packing up and just saying, "Okay, well, I gotta go see if Krypton is still there. That I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm. Now there is also the Cal Penn character. Stanford is his name, I believe. So he actually had a bigger role originally. He was supposed to be a former science reporter for the Daily Planet who was bribed by Luthor to plant false evidence of Krypton still existing. So that would have drawn Superman away, and then that would have allowed Lex to get off because Superman would have to come and testify.
Now, see, that would have worked for me. That would have worked. Yeah.
And it also explains why Cal Penn's character knows all this stuff.
Yeah, because he doesn't say much I think he doesn't say much in the movie.
Well, I don't think he says anything.
But he knows an awful lot.
Yeah.
Like he seems to know all the properties of, kryptonite and everything. And yeah, now see, if they had left that in the movie, where, like you said, he planted, the evidence that Krypton is still out there. Yeah, okay. See, then I would have bought it.
Yeah. All right.
As usual, they cut the stuff out of the movie that makes sense. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that actually is a good transition to talking about Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor.
Okay.
So, and Kevin Spacey, another one of these guys who's just like Singer, has become very problematic in recent years. But putting all that aside, what was your impressions of him as Lex Luthor?
Well, as you know, Gene Hackman is always going to be my favorite Lex Luthor, and it's interesting that in this movie, much like Brandon Routh, he's doing a Christopher Reeve. Kevin Spacey, he starts out doing Gene Hackman, but the longer the movie goes on, the more darker his performance gets, and the more it moves away from Gene Hackman. Until it becomes its own thing. I mean, by the time we get to the thing where he's shanking Superman like they're in the shower of a prison.
Yeah.
You say, damn, okay, well, Lex. And I have a problem with that whole scene anyway, because, okay, you go back to the earlier movies. Lex Luthor had schemes to kill Superman, but they were elegant schemes that seems like stuff Lex Luthor would do. Well, he's going to build a supercomputer that's going to kill Superman. He's going to create a nuclear man, his own being that has more power than Superman. See, these are schemes worthy of Lex Luthor. To get a bunch of guys to beat up, kick the shit out of Superman and then shank him. I don't know. To me, that's not worthy of Lex Luthor.
Now, to me, I actually like that. I think I like I can really see Kevin Spacey's Luthor being and Gene Hackman's Luthor being the same guy, because this is a Kevin Spacey. This is a Lex Luthor who he had the world on its head. He had done all this kind of like goofy stuff. He was very kind of like he reveled in like his genius and his schemes and all that, and then he gets sent to prison. And I imagine, because he mentions to Kitty, right? He's like, prison's a creepy place. One must have creepy friends to survive. So I imagine
that's a great line. Yeah, that's a great line.
Yeah, he had some shit happen to him in prison.
Yeah.
Like
again, the same person I was talking about, he talked about, Lois Lane is changed because it's 5 years. This same person I was talking to was saying, same thing with Lex Luthor. It's been 5 years. He's been in jail. It's not the same guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe that if you would put Gene Hackman's Luthor in a place like Oz, I could see him coming out like Kevin Spacey.
Oh, okay.
Like you've seen Oz, the TV show, right?
Oh yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
You got that normal guy who goes in at the beginning, and then as it throughout the series progresses, he becomes more of a hard ass.
Yeah.
I that's what I see happening to Lex Luthor in between these movies. And so when he comes out and he's been around these guys, he does have this, he's happy that he's got money again, that he's got a real estate scheme. But when Superman comes back, it's almost like a a post-traumatic stress trigger.
And that's actually why he now hates Superman, because Superman forced him to change and become the person that he is now by putting him in that position.
Right. Before, it wasn't so much that he hated Superman, it's just that he saw Superman as a challenge.
Yeah.
With this, now he has a burning, seething hatred for Superman. So, like, just like the shiving scene, it feels so personal. And that's why I love it. That's why I think it works really well.
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, when you're stabbing some, I've heard this, that when you stab somebody, that's a personal act.
Yeah.
When you stab them, yeah.
So when he does that, when he stabs him and he twists it and he breaks it off, and then he like practically hisses in his ear, "Now fly," and he throws him off the edge. Like,
and you can see the look on his face is like, man, he's into this. Yeah. This is what he's been dreaming of.
Yeah, and it's downright chilling, like how he changes like that when Superman is involved. And I thought Spacey did a really good job of that, and that's why I believe, you do have a point. Like, the real Lex Luthor is more about like these schemes to kill Superman. He's much more dignified. But for what this Luthor has been through, I can accept this.
Okay, I definitely see your point there. And listen, don't get me wrong, I love his performance in this movie. I love it's like next to Brandon Routh, it's probably it is my favorite performance in the movie because they're very evenly matched.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question. Excuse me. I always ask people this. Why is it in Superman movies it always comes down to real estate?
Yeah, that's just like every time.
Every damn Superman movie, even Man of Steel, it comes down to real estate.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that in Man of Steel, but you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it always comes down to real estate in these movies.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Oh.
Now that's his thing. He wants to build a brand new continent.
Yeah, when I remember watching this movie in the theater, and when she asks him, "Why would you build a continent?" and he points to it and he's like, "Land," and I'm like, I remember rolling my eyes. So I'm like, "Oh, come on, you're gonna do the same thing in the first movie?"
Yeah, it always comes down to land in Superman movies.
Yeah.
Man of Steel, the Kryptonians, they say, okay, yeah, well, we need a place to live. So, we're just going to take we're going to take Australia and we're going to, and we're going to displace the people that live there. I said, there you go. Again, land.
Also, why did he have these like maps made up to come rotate in the study? Why not just make a PowerPoint presentation? Wouldn't that have been easier?
Yeah, but it's not as dramatic. And Lex Luthor, he is kind of theatrical.
Yeah, but it just seems a little bit. It does feel a little bit weird. Just one of those things. Also, why would you have a pool table in a boat?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
And you see it; the balls are always moving all over the place.
The balls are always rolling back and forth. They're always rolling back. That boat was bad though.
That was a nice. Oh yeah, that huge library in there, and the glass bottom boat. I mean, that thing looked awesome.
Yeah, its own helicopter.
Helicopter, yeah.
If you're going to be a supervillain and you're going to have an ocean-going, base of operations, that's it. That's the one you want.
That's what's nice about this one and Superman the movie, where they give Lex Luthor a proper supervillain lair. Right? So in Superman the movie, you had the underground, the underground thing in the subways. And
right.
And then here in this, you've got the Gertrude, the massive yacht, and it's just they're proper supervillain lairs. They work really good for his character, I thought.
Why is that thing ringing? Hold on a minute, that's my phone. Okay, never mind. Stop. Whoever it was.
Okay.
I'll talk to them later.
All right.
But Kevin Spacey, I had no, when I first heard he was going to play Lex Luthor, I said to myself, wow. I said, you know what? That wouldn't have been my choice, but now that they said it, I can see it.
Well, he was also in the running back when they were talking about Superman Lives.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was, I remember Kevin Smith, I'm pretty sure in the documentary, he talks about how when he was writing the script, he was picturing Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
And no, go ahead.
What was I gonna say? Much as I love Parker Posey, I didn't care for her too much in this movie. She was like too shrill.
Okay, I'll get to her in a minute. But one other thing I wanted to say there are two things I wanted to say about Luther. Is one, like, I love his speech to Kitty at the beginning when he's talking about when he's telling the story about Prometheus, and when she says you're not a god, and he says gods are selfish creatures in who fly around in red capes and don't share their power with mankind. Like that was a good summation of why he has a hatred for Superman.
Right.
And that's a logic that makes sense. In fact, more so than I thought Hackman's Luther. There is more sense of the rivalry. Like Hackman's just a guy who's looking for a fight, who's looking for a challenge. But with Spacey's Luther, you get the feeling that it wasn't so much that he wanted a challenge from Superman. It's more that he was pissed that Superman, has this alien technology and all that, and he's not using it to help people. He's to help mankind. And that's like that doesn't quite fit with the Hackman Luther, like that motivation, but it does fit with a version of Luther that I think, especially a more modern version of Luther. And the other thing I wanted to say is this was a little funny behind the scenes bit of trivia, but while they were filming, Kevin Spacey would drive around in a golf cart that was called Lex's Super Buster, and he had a stuffed Superman doll being dragged behind it on a rope, and he had a megaphone. He'd be saying "Superman must die" into the megaphone.
Kevin Spacey, he's an idiot. He's got a goofy sense of humor.
Now, and there are two more things I thought of as I was saying that. One, I like when they go into the fortress, and there's the reference to Superman 2 when Kitty says to him, "You've been here before, haven't you?"
You've been here before, yeah.
Yeah, and also the I like that he embraces the baldness, right? Like that's another way to show that he's not as prone to vanity as Hackman's Luther was, right?
Yeah,
like,
he was very vain.
Right. Like in the beginning, when after Gertrude dies, he pulls off the wig and he tosses the little girl, and he's just like, this is like a new face for me. Like I don't need to hide behind the wig or anything. Like he's embracing like who he is now.
Because my understanding is that Spacey actually did shave his hair off.
Yeah.
Hackman refused to do that. Hackman refused. He didn't. The only time we see him bald is in the movie, and that's like a skull cap.
Right.
That he had. He's not actually.
Same thing in Superman 2. He wears a skull cap in the beginning, but later when he's first chance he gets, he puts on the wig again.
Yeah. So I had a thought about Spacey. Well, never mind. Go ahead. I'll come back to it.
All right. So Parker Posey. Now I actually liked her in this movie.
I love Parker Posey, but I don't know. After Miss Teschmacher,
that's one thing though. Like, I don't know why they didn't just call her Miss Teschmacher.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes no sense. Like, Lex Luthor's been in prison for 5 years, and then he finds another female supervillain sidekick. Like, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. And since we've got all the rest of these characters from the original movie, well, then why not just call him Miss Teschmacher?
Yeah, it's not like the character died or anything like that. And
right, no.
Everyone else got recast, so it doesn't make any sense why he just throw Miss Teschmacher away and find some other floozy to stand in her place.
Exactly, but and usually I enjoy I don't know. She was just, I don't know. There was just something off about it. Okay, it just seemed like you're supposed to be Luther's henchwoman.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to be his wife, criticizing him and getting on his nerve and insulting him every chance that you get.
But I love those parts when she did that.
It seemed like she was just doing too much of that.
I loved those parts. Those are my favorite parts of her performance. Like when he's using the model to demonstrate his plan, and Stanford drops the little crystal fragment into the water, And then nothing happens. She's like, wow, that's really something, Lex. And then he says, wait for it. And then a few seconds, and then she says again, she's like, wow, that's really something, Lex. It's freaking Gone with the Wind. Like, I love that. I loved her. I loved how she treated him. I loved how she reacted to him. Although, one thing, though, is like, I don't understand why Luther even keeps her around.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Maybe he likes bantering with her.
Yeah.
I like how she adopted the dog after the dog was left. He ate. The dog ate the other dog, and she adopted him.
Because they leave the dogs behind, and they don't give him any food or anything. So they come back, and she sees them, and she's like, weren't there two of them? And you see him, he's like chewing on the bones and shit. It's like, oh.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Oh, now I remember what I wanted to say about Luther before. What I wanted to say about, okay, the whole Fortress of Solitude thing. I don't like that. I'm sorry. I have no idea who that is. Okay. Now, I understand why Superman does not have any kind of defensive measures to stop people from coming into the Fortress of Solitude because it's in the middle of the Arctic.
Yeah.
You know, and he probably figures, listen, if you're crazy enough to try to walk all the way to my fortress, you're welcome to it. Because he figures nobody's gonna brave the sub-zero temperatures anyway to try to get there. Okay. But after Luther did come in there the first time, it seemed to me that he was, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to fix it so nobody else can get it.
Especially if he's going to be leaving Earth for 5 years, right? I mean,
thank you.
I mean, that's like leaving it's like going on you're going on extended vacation and you leave your front door wide open.
And you leave you leave your front door wide open. Second of all, Luther comes in and he has no problem using the Kryptonian technology. I don't know. I have a problem with that also. Because it seems to me that Superman would have changed the locks or the codes or whatever, so that if somebody even did get in, they couldn't access the technology. That's, I'm sorry. To me, that makes Superman seem like kind of dim.
Yeah.
That he wouldn't take steps to, lock it up.
Right. I agree with you. Yeah, you're right. I was thinking that too. Also, another problem I had with that scene is that Jor-El's no longer an artificial intelligence. He's basically just a recording.
Bingo.
That's something else that it doesn't fit with the first movie.
Because if you go back to, I'm about to say that, because if you go back to the first movie, Jor-El is actually having a conversation with his son. Right. He's not just repeating stuff because he's an intelligence. He's artificial, like you said, he's an AI. Yeah. So he's actually having a conversation with him. In this movie, he's repeating stuff. Yeah. Also, there is now that's also kind of a story problem with the first two movies, because if you look at the Richard Donner cut, when Luther goes into the Fortress of Solitude and he activates it, like, it is also only recordings of Jor-El. Like in the original, in the Richard Lester version, obviously Jor-El's been replaced because Brando didn't want to work with Lester. But in the Donner version, you had Brando in those scenes, but he still is talking as if it's a recording. So there's some inconsistency in the original movies as well. I would just like to say though that in this movie, the Fortress of Solitude looks absolutely spectacular.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh my God! Well, I've always liked the look of it. This crystal fortress and sticking up out of the ice and stuff like that. I've always loved the look of it.
That was something I really did not like about Man of Steel, how it was just kind of like this, this dark, gloomy, crashed, derelict spaceship.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no sense of style to it. There's no majesty. No majesty. That's exactly the word I was looking for.
No majesty to it.
Right.
Yeah. Oh.
And I think the best though I've seen in live action is what Supergirl did with it, because not only is it the Crystal Fortress and everything, it's got that, but it feels like something a person could actually live and work in. Right? Like you've got the memorabilia from Krypton, you've got like the the consoles and stuff, and it feels a bit more. It feels a bit more livable. Whereas and this is a criticism that it goes back to the original movies as well, where it just feels like it doesn't feel like a place where someone would go to spend time and it seems almost too cold. Like on the outside it looks beautiful, but on the inside it feels kind of cold.
It's very cold and impersonal.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas in Supergirl, like in the comics, they make it, it looks the same on the outside, but on the inside it feels more personal.
Right. Because this is supposed to be Superman. This is, the place he goes to get away, and he's got all the memorabilia from, Krypton and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
yeah. So that's a criticism I had about the original movies as well. And also in lots of depictions, like also in Smallville, had the same problem where the fortress didn't have any sort of personality to it. It just felt very cold and alien. And so I like that in Supergirl they changed that and they added that personal touch to it, and it makes it feel it feels more connected to Superman than it does in all the other incarnations.
Right. Let me see what else before. Oh, can I talk a bit about how much I hate Superman's costume?
Oh yeah, I was going to mention that as well. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Go nuts.
Okay. First of all, the S shield. There is a reason why it covers his whole chest.
Right.
And it's good. It's good for the actor because it makes the actor's chest look broader.
Right. Yeah.
That teeny tiny little S chest of Brandon, it doesn't do him any justice at all.
No, not at all.
That thing is supposed to cover your whole chest. I mean, you're Superman, damn it.
Yeah.
With a big S. Those trunks he's wearing, I'm sorry. Those dainty little panties, I can't go for it. I don't like the cape.
The cape I didn't mind, but I don't like that the neckline is so high.
Yeah, I don't like the neckline. I don't like the cape at all. The cape looks, I don't know what it is. Cape looks like a blanket. It didn't look like a cape. It looked like a blanket. I'm sorry. I just don't like that costume. The blue looks, I don't know. The blue is too blue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be blue, but not that blue. It's like I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I just don't like this version of. You know what? I like the Man of Steel costume better than I like this one.
Oh no, the Man of Steel costume is great. I thought that was a great way to update the costume and I love the Man of Steel costume. I will not complain as much as I have to complain about the Zack Snyder movies. One complaint you will never hear come out of my mouth is about the costumes.
Yeah.
Like the costumes are brilliantly done in those movies.
Costumes are on point. Yep. Costumes are on point.
But yeah, in this movie, you're right. The shield is too small. The trunks are too narrow, and the boots also seem a little bit too short. A little bit, like they're not really, but just like the way they're designed, it just feels like they feel a little bit off. And I don't mind the darker red. I know a lot of people hated the darker red, but I actually kind of like it. It kind of reminded me of the Flesher cereals.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
Yeah, so the darker red I like, but I agree with you. The neckline I did not like, but the cape I never had any problem with the cape. That kind of surprised me when you said that, because the cape looks totally fine to me. I never thought anything looked weird about it, other than just the neckline being too high.
Okay.
Also, I don't like the double S shield. Right, he's got the shield on his chest, and he's also got it on his belt buckle.
On his belt buckle, yeah, which is unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. Yeah. I didn't like that. But other than that, the suit is one of the biggest failings of this movie. And if you would put him in something that was, even if you just put him in the same thing he wore back in or here's an image I can show you real quick. Someone did an edit to it. and they kind of made the shield bigger and the trunks bigger, and it looks a lot better. So I'm going to show you this.
But if you, but even in Legends, he was in the real Superman costume, and you saw how good he looked in that.
Right. So if you look at this, you see this picture here. Someone made an edit to it where they made the trunks bigger and they made the shield bigger, and they brightened up the red, and they also reduced the neckline too, and it looks much better. Like, and
absolutely,
even that, like that, and that's slightly different from the classic suit, but it still has that same feel. That I think it would have been a good. Here's another one someone made here, and you see this. They just kind of removed the trunks and they made it look a little bit more regal, which not quite as big a fan of this, but I can see why. It is better. You see this one here I'm talking about?
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. You know what? Anything looks better than that. Especially that S shield. See, me, I'm a big believer in the shield covering his entire chest.
Right, exactly.
I
agree with you that.
When he pulls his shirt open, that's what you ought to see. You ought to see this big, if you're a bad guy, you should see this big S coming right at you.
Yeah. Now, although I will say, I do like the slight redesign they did to the S. I like that the little, it's kind of like, it's got the classic, it feels like the classic symbol, but it's also got it's just slightly different, and I like it. I like the way they redesigned the S shield.
Okay.
Although I do agree with you, it should have been much bigger on his chest.
And like I said, it works for the actor as well because it gives the illusion that his chest is wider, it's bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
It works for him as well. I mean, because now you got that tiny little chest. It only shows how narrow Brandon Routh's chest really is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think it's not so much because he put on like 20 pounds of muscle for this movie. But the problem is that suit doesn't really do him any favors.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That's the big problem. Let's see. What else I wanted to talk about?
What else? They get a lot of use out of the John Williams Superman theme song in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, also, I did remember something else I wanted to mention. When you mentioned the John Williams theme, reminded me because if you remember, one of my biggest criticisms of Superman the movie was the scene where he goes flying with Lois Lane and she has that really bad poem narration voiceover.
Yeah.
Like I hated.
Read my mind.
Yeah, I hated that poem.
Everybody does, except for me.
You're the only one who likes it.
I'm the only one who likes it. Yeah, everybody. Even people who love this movie to death, they hate that scene.
Yeah. So and remember, if you remember what I said back then, is that I thought that scene would have worked so much better if you keep everything, you keep the music, you just remove Margot Kidder's voiceover, and that scene works perfectly. They did that in this movie.
Yes.
Like when he and Lois are flying. There's no dialogue, no voice. It's just the instrumental music and like just them flying, and it works perfectly. Like
that's Singer doing his version of that scene. But like you said, he does it the way everybody wants to see it with no voiceover, just the music.
Yeah. And I think it works much better. It feels more. First off, the voiceover distracts from the majesty of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the voiceover, I feel the voiceover always kind of distracts from you the fact that, well, look at what they're doing, look at what they're seeing. Here, Singer puts you right in there and lets you feel what they're seeing. So I thought they did a good job with that. And
yeah. I mean, listen, I like that scene because I like what the scene represents.
Mm-hmm.
It's the purest way for Superman and Lois to fall in love.
Yeah.
Because the one thing about Superman, here's the one thing that we always love about Superman. He flies.
Mm-hmm.
As Zod asked Lex Luthor in Superman 2, does he fly? Lex says constantly.
Yeah.
He flies. How does he fly? Nobody knows. There have been reams of web pages and books and dissertations and papers speculating on why Superman flies.
He just flies. Just accept it. I mean,
at the core of it, it doesn't matter. He flies. Yeah. And this is a gift that he shares with Lois.
Yeah, and I mentioned that.
And that's what makes that scene so powerfully emotional, at least for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned this too when we talked about Superman, is that I remember when in the 80s when John Byrne rebooted Superman, he tried to explain everything through like some form of telekinesis. Like he's got a.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, just let people enjoy. Like, why do you got to go and over-explain everything? Who gives a shit, really?
Yeah, he flies.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's why he's Superman. It's like, why does Batman have a can of shark repellent in the Batcopter? He's Batman.
Yeah.
Why does Superman fly? Because he's Superman.
Oh, it reminds me. I just finished reading this this indie comic. Sean Ali brought it to my attention called "The Wrong Earth," and it's like this. It's this idea of like, what if the 66 Batman and like the I guess maybe the Snyder Batman switched Earths. And it's got kind of like that. And so it's like you've got the 60s and the character's name is Dragonfly. And there's a scene where he's the 60s version is in the darker, grittier Earth. And he gets shot by like a bunch of gang members. They just start pumping him full of bullets. And he gets out, he's fine. Like, how are you okay? He's like, oh, I sprayed myself with bullet repellent spray.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
And then you have you got the grittier Dragonfly. He's in the like the 60s version. And he's in the car. And he's like connected to like his supercomputer back in his doppelganger's lair. And he says like, wait a minute, I wonder if I can use this. And he just asks it to locate the villain, and it locates it right away. He's like, oh my God.
This is great. Why did I have one of these all along? Oh man, I got to get that. The Wrong Earth.
The Wrong Earth. Yeah, it's a pretty good.
Okay.
Book. So let's see, what else do I want to mention here? Oh, the Kryptonite Island. Before that, like just the whole sequence when Superman is flying to go rescue Lois and Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Now he knows Richard's going, right? Because Richard says, I'm going to go out there in the seaplane. And then he sees what's about to happen to Metropolis. And he can hear like the destruction already starting to come. And he flies back. Like that he has to choose, he has to prioritize.
Right.
Which is the greater need. Like I love that moment, because in that moment he decides, well, I know Richard's going there, so I'm going to hope that he can handle it and I'll come back later, and I'm going to take care of the people of Metropolis right now. Like, this is a Superman who saves people, who cares about saving lives. Like that.
Okay. Here's another thing I love about Superman and what makes him a unique character. As far as I know, he's the only superhero that flies around the world looking for natural disasters to stop and people to save.
Right, yeah.
That's his thing. That's what he does.
Exactly.
Okay. I always get the complaint from people, well, I want to see a Superman movie where he punches somebody. Yeah, okay, well, Superman does occasionally punch somebody, but that's not his main thing.
Yeah.
His main thing, if you remember from Superman the movie, we got a whole bunch of scenes where he was flying around the world trying to stop disasters. He was holding up the bridge. He caught the school bus.
Whenever I remember getting in so many arguments with people over this movie back when it first came out, and I remember people, like, the most common complaint was, well, this movie sucks because Superman never throws a punch. And I'm like, well, you know what other movie didn't have Superman throwing a punch? Superman the movie. He never throws a punch. He never throws a punch in that movie either.
Right. As a matter of fact, you know what? You could have 30 minutes of Superman flying around saving people, just playing the Superman theme, and I'd be happy.
Yeah.
You could do that because that's what Superman does.
Right.
And again, this is another way that shows the relationship. If they had ever did a sequel to this, I'd really like to see a friendship grow between Superman and Richard, because he trusts the guy. You know, he says, okay. He seems like a capable dude. I know he loves Lois. He's going to do everything he can to help her. The people of Metropolis need me more. Yeah, exactly. And he says, okay, I'm going to go save them. And that's what he does, because that's what Superman does.
Yeah, that's one of the things this movie does the best out of any Superman movie to date. Is it really showcases in spectacular fashion, because yes, Superman the movie did it as well, but they didn't really have the technology to really convey it. But this movie, like, it shows how amazing it can be to watch Superman flying around saving people.
Like when he saved the space shuttle and the airplane.
Right. It's such a like, it's so different from the helicopter scene and the Air Force One scene, right? Because in those, it's just very quickly done, right? There's no real spectacle to it. But this,
oh man, this is spectacle.
It's like, that's one thing Singer did perfectly, is he showcased Superman's abilities better than anyone else.
Yeah, like when he's got the plane and he's holding on to it and the plane is going into the stadium, and just at the very last minute, Superman puts his legs up under him and he said, and you see the plane ripple. The skin
yeah.
Oh, that was a great touch.
Well, that was something else. So one of the times I saw this movie, it was with a friend of mine who's got a master's or a PhD or something in physics, right? And as we were watching this movie, you know, after the end of it, I'm like, what do you think? He's like, you know what I really liked about it? I'm like, what? And he's like, the physics actually makes sense. He's like, the physics in this movie, they actually make sense. And he compared it to Spider-Man 2. He's like, the physics in Spider-Man 2 were complete nonsense. But in Superman 2, they actually made an effort to make sure everything fits together. He said that he really liked that touch about it. So, that's like the scene when he does, like, he pushes the hole in the front of the nose of the plane, it kind of ripples out. That was like to prevent like shock waves or something like that. I can't remember exactly what his explanation was, but he explained it to me, and he's like, that's why he does it, and that makes perfect sense in that scene.
And like, see, to me, that is the best way to introduce Superman in any movie. Have him saving somebody, because that's what Superman does.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, all that stuff with super villains and everything like that. It's like the Fantastic Four. I tell everybody, okay, who is the Fantastic Four? The Fantastic Four is a family of scientific adventurers. Mm-hmm. Their actual job in the Marvel Universe is to go out and explore those areas of the Marvel Universe no other Marvel character goes in.
Right.
They expand the boundaries of the Marvel Universe. They go to the negative zone, and they go into outer space, and they go to other dimensions. Fighting supervillains is something, you know, that come with the territory. That's on the side. But that's not their primary job. Like the Avengers. The Avengers, that's their thing. They fight supervillains.
Yeah.
You know, that's their profile. Mm-hmm. That's their mission statement. That's not the mission statement for, you know, the Fantastic Four.
Right.
You know, Superman, his thing is he saves people. Now, occasionally he may have to fight a supervillain along the way, but it's not like he actively goes out and looks for the parasite and says, okay, well, I got to beat up the parasite. You know?
No, his primary motivation is he wants to save as many people as possible.
Exactly. And that's why, like I said, he's the only superhero that I know that, okay, once he punches out as Clark Kent, he changes to Superman and he goes flying around to India or, you know, or I mean, you know, wherever, or he finds a forest fire to put out.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
He stops a tsunami or something. Yeah, that's what he does.
Superman is just a superhuman search and rescue. That's,
bingo.
That's exactly what he's supposed to be. Like, he's not necessarily a crime fighter. He's a crime fighter by consequence if it happens.
Right. If he happens to hear like, oh, okay, somebody's trying to rob the bank. Like they did in this movie, like he's hovering above the earth. Oh, and he's got his super hearing tuned in. He's listening to all this stuff. And he hears a bell go off and he says, oh, okay, well, let me go see what this is all about.
That was such a great moment when he's up there above the earth and he just hears everything. And like you can imagine they did a really good job of portraying that. And then and again, that's another great scene where he's flying around, he's stopping crime, and he's saving people. And the memorable scene when the guy walks up to him, points the gun at his face, and fires the bullet, and it smashes against his eye. And then Brandon Routh just has this little smirk on his face.
Yeah, he got this little smirk. See, you're not supposed. See, Superman, you're not supposed to enjoy your powers that much, you know.
But no, I'm glad they show him doing that, because that was like in the first movie when Jor-El says to him after his first night, and he's like, and you know, and Superman's talking about how he's like, how good it felt to save people and to use his powers and to do good. Like, and that's I get the feeling that Brandon Routh as Superman is really enjoying being Superman in those scenes.
Well, yeah. I love that whole Bank Robinson. I love it, first of all, because they managed to get in the whole faster than a speeding bullet.
Yeah.
Thing. Because we see the bullets coming out and they slow down, and then all of a sudden you see Superman, he's racing the bullet and he gets ahead of it. Yeah. So I said, oh, cool, faster than a speeding bullet.
Yeah. And then also, and when Luthor's continent is causing the destruction of Metropolis, and he flies through, like he's using his powers in smart ways, right? Like he's using his heat vision to vaporize the glass. He's using his super breath to blow out the fire. Like it, and he's just everything he's doing, he's going and he's saving. Although one thing I think they should have done would have been a nice Easter egg is he saves the construction worker, right? I think that should have been a black actor, because then you got a tie-in for John Henry Irons, who becomes Steel in the comics. Who was also rescued by Superman from he fell off the high rise.
Yeah, right. Yeah, when he falls off of the construction site.
Yeah. So he saves a construction worker who falls, but it's a white guy.
But it's a white guy. You're right. Yeah.
I think they missed a good opportunity for an Easter egg to have that be a black guy, and then to have like a hint of that guy will become Steel.
But you make an excellent point where you say that we get to see Superman use the full range of all his superpowers in very smart, intelligent ways, like you say. Yeah.
And that was a really nice touch. He's not just using his powers to blow shit up and destroy the city, and he's not completely. He cares about the people who are in danger. Whereas in Man of Steel, where he drags Zod out from the middle of a cornfield, chucks him into a gas station in the center of Smallville, and stands there and waits. And his advice to the people is, stay inside. And they're standing behind wooden doors and they're locking him like that's going to do shit.
Stay inside. Yeah, okay. Yes. Yeah, that's going to do any good.
I mean, Superman literally brought Zod to a populated area. He took it from it. That movie. Oh.
Yeah, and see, that's the one thing that you can never lose sight of is Superman. And I know I hear this all the time. First of all, I hear from people, well, Superman, he's boring. My opinion, and we're going to lose some listeners right now. My opinion, boring people think Superman is boring.
Yeah.
Superman is not boring. Superman cares about other people, which is another thing that separates him from other superheroes. He cares about people. He would let a supervillain go first before it brought harm to innocence.
Yeah.
That's his whole thing. He cares about other people. He cares about other people being safe.
Yeah.
If you lose that, then you lose a lot of what makes the character great. And
if you lose that, you're not doing a Superman story, in my opinion.
Yeah,
you're just not. And Superman has to care about the people. They have to be his number one priority. It's not, and if you throw that away so that he can slug it out and level buildings with a supervillain, you're doing a real disservice to the character and what the character is about.
And I've never understood.
If you just want to see two super powerful guys slugging it out without concern about collateral damage, go watch Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, exactly. Which please don't let me get started on Dragon Ball Z. Talk about boring. I've never understood people that want to turn Superman into something that he's not.
Yeah.
Don't take away what makes him a unique character, and don't tell me, well, you can't write good stories about Superman because he's too powerful. Well, no, because you don't have the necessary talent and imagination to think of stories to write about a character this powerful.
Grant Morrison wrote the most powered up version of Superman ever in comics.
Thank you.
In All-Star Superman, he had Superman's powers increase like 100-fold or something. And he was more powerful than he'd ever been in his entire existence. And guess what? Time after time after time after time, U.S. people what is the best Superman story ever written? All-Star Superman. Where he
All-Star
was the
Superman.
most powerful that he's ever been. Because the reason is because Grant Morrison understands Superman. Alan Moore understood Superman. That's why Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is considered one of the greatest Superman stories. That's why For the Man Who Has Everything is considered one of the greatest Superman stories.
Oh, yeah. The Man Who Has Yeah.
Yeah. Mark Waid, Birthright, right? These guys, they understood what a Superman story is. They understood what that character is. And they wrote stories about that character. They don't change him into something he's not because they're lazy or because they don't like the character. You don't like Superman, don't write a Superman story.
There you go. Don't write a Superman story. If you want to write a story about an all-powerful character that goes around beating up people and killing people, well, go write somebody else.
Exactly.
Go write that character. Go write that character.
Yeah. Go make a Supreme movie. So yeah, it's just like I don't understand. People are like, well, I never liked the character that way, so I have to change it. No, just find a character that you do like. Don't completely twist it into something it's not, and piss off all the fans of the character just because you want something different. First off, it's uncreative as hell, right? It's creatively lazy, and second, it's just arrogant. To think that, well, I don't like this, so I have to change it, so I will like it. No, you don't. Just find something you do like.
Right, exactly. You're changing it because that's what you like.
Right. It's selfish, it's arrogant, and it's just, I'm tired of seeing that.
You can't see me right now, but I'm standing up.
Yeah. And, you know what?
I got to give it to you. Very well said.
Yeah, and that's why the best superhero movies are the ones that you find people who do care about these characters, who understand them. And yeah, maybe they make some changes to update or modernize it, but at the core, the characters are true to who they've always been.
Exactly.
Yeah, Captain America in the movies, he's much more laid back than Captain America in the comics, right? He's much more of, Captain America in the comics, they sometimes write him as a grandpa.
Uh-huh.
But in the movies, he feels like a modern guy. Even with his backstory, he still feels like a guy who's living in the modern world. He feels like a young guy. So yeah, that's a change. But at his core, he still has those values, right? He's still fighting for the ideals of America, the ideals of freedom and liberty. And he's still, at his core, a decent guy. Yeah, maybe he curses a little bit more, but that's it.
And let me ask you something, since we are on this particular line of character investigation, because I know a lot of people have a problem with it. And these are the same people that said, well, you can't make a movie called Captain America because that'll offend this one and offend this one and offend that one. Do you have a problem with the saying that Superman stands for truth, justice, and the American way?
Not really. I just think I think it's a bit archaic because Superman tends to be more of a global character.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is a little bit of, and also the thing about the American way part is that really came out during the 50s, during the Red Scare.
Right.
But before that, it was just truth and justice.
Mm-hmm.
So my whole thing is like people saying like, oh, it's so integral to Superman. Well, it's really not. It wasn't there to begin with. So I don't really have a problem with it one way or the other.
Oh, okay. I noticed it because I noticed that's in this movie. I didn't pick up on it before, but that's what Perry White said. Perry White says, yeah, does he still stand for truth and justice?
Yeah, truth, justice, all that stuff. Yeah. And
right, and all that stuff, yeah.
Well, you got to remember, when this came out as well, it was at the height of the Iraq War. So, and now America's standing is probably even worse than it was back then. But America's standing was like the worst it had been in like 50 years at that point. So I understand why they didn't put that in the movie because they had an international market to think of. So I think that made sense. It didn't fit, and it wasn't told in this when he used truth, justice, the American way. They were able to make a commentary on it when Lois said, "You're going to end up fighting every elected official in the country." right?
Right. Yeah, I
Like,
remember. Yeah.
but in this, they didn't really have that moment to do some sort of commentary on it, so I understand why they left it out.
Gotcha. Very good. Thank you.
But yeah. In general, I don't have a problem with it. Like, one of my favorite Superman stories is actually titled "What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the
True
American
Justice
Way."
in the American Way. Yeah,
Right,
I was
yeah.
thinking about that too. Yeah.
So yeah, they use that, and that's one of my favorite Superman stories ever. Like, I don't have a problem with it, also the thing about Superman is that I always find it hilarious when xenophobic conservatives get pissed off about Superman, like them changing something about Superman's patriotism or something, when Superman himself is an illegal immigrant.
Well, he's the ultimate immigrant story.
He's the ultimate immigrant story. He's an illegal immigrant. He's a refugee, literally a refugee.
Yeah, literally a refugee. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's raised here. He ends up adopting these values, and he ends up fighting for them. But he also fights on a global level. He doesn't just fight for America. And I think that's one of the things. That's the only reason, the only quibble I have with the American way thing is that Superman's so much bigger than just one country. That's just how I feel about it.
Very profound. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I appreciate your insight. No, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Now, I also want to talk about the Kryptonite Island, because this, or just like those scenes when he goes and he rescues Lois, Richard, and Jason from the sinking ship, and right there's that, like I even get kind of chills thinking about remembering when you just hear that slow build to the music and you see the feet land on it, and then you just see the shield in the window as he pulls it up, and then it cuts to Brandon Routh coming out of the water, and he's just holding on. And there's this massive ship, and he's like this small speck.
He's pulling this whole because it's like half of the ship is falling into the water. It's broken apart, and that thing is honking huge. Man.
It is, yeah. And then he's holding it with one hand. He pulls the door off, and he reaches his hand in for Richard to take, and he's like, "Do you have them?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've got them both." And he just lets it go, and it's like so effortless while he's just hovering there. It's such the way Singer films Superman using his powers, like you realize that it feels like Superman.
And he's so calm about it. He says, "Do you have them?"
Right.
He's not sure what I got them. I go, okay. And he just lets the ship go. You know?
Well, it's like we said about, in like, remember when we talked about Superman the movie, and I was talking about how Grant Morrison's theory of Superman is that because nothing can hurt him, because he's so powerful, he's someone who would just be relaxed all the time. And we talked about that Christopher Reeve scene when he's being interviewed by Lois, and he's just sitting there very relaxed and casual on her terrace. There's a lot of that in Brandon Routh too, and the way he's using his powers.
He's just chill, Well, He said, okay. Well, as long as you got him, okay. And he just lets the ship go. Like it's not and he does the same thing that Christopher Reeve does. I mean, when it comes to flying, it's as if he's okay. The actual effort is for him to stay on the ground, because when he gets ready to fly, he doesn't jump or it's not an effort for him to get into the air. He just goes. He just whoosh, and and he's gone.
Mm-hmm. Like when he rescues Kitty from the car, and she's like demanding that he take her to a hospital, and he's like, okay, all right, just calm down. And it's just like it's like he just takes a step and he just like hovers gently off the ground.
Yeah, and he's gone.
Or like when he takes Lois from the roof of the Daily Planet, and she says to him, Richard always takes me flying all the time. And then he says, not like this. And then she looks down and she suddenly realized he took off and she didn't even notice.
He took off. Exactly. That is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. She looks down. He took off. She didn't even know it.
Yeah, we don't need this shit where like he charges up and there's like cracks appearing in the ground and all that, and he causes an earthquake. No, it's effortless for him.
Again, that's not super. Exactly. Flight is effortless for him.
Mm-hmm.
It
comes as natural to him as breathing.
I always love the flying scenes in this movie and when Christopher Reeve does it, because it's like it's effortless.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then when he a lot of people complain about him having the strength to go and lift the Kryptonite Island, but I thought they handled that really well, because they show you right after Lois pulls the Kryptonite shard out of him. And then he flies up above the cloud and he bathes in the solar energy first.
In the solar energy, yeah. Yeah.
And that I can't think of any movie that has really shown, not live action, that's really shown that, like how he gets his power from the sun.
It's like, okay, I know people, like you said, have had a problem with that, and I've always cited that scene. I said, well, he flies up and gets like a supercharge.
Right, you see him. He's sitting there. He looks like he's taking a hot shower almost.
Right, exactly.
And then his hands tighten to fist, and you're like, oh yeah, shit's about to go down.
Right. So he's getting he's charging up.
Mm-hmm.
So he can have the strength, because he knows he's got to lift this thing up out of the water.
Yeah.
And carry it he's got to carry it, so he's got to carry it quite a ways.
Now that's another example of an epic scene, like when the island's the continent's rising up out of the sea, and then like the chunks are falling down, and then you see it's Superman there holding it all up on his shoulders.
Right.
That is it's there's so many epic moments like this, and the script has lots of problems, but it's totally at least I feel those script problems, the whole thing with Jason, the problems with Lois, the fact that it's basically a remake of Superman the movie, all that stuff is overshadowed for me by those epic scenes.
Yeah, it's got. Okay, as we said earlier, just like the X-Men movie, this movie has got flaws. There are some things I was watching last night. I was looking at it, and like one of my eyes would half close under certain things. But let me say this: those little things does not spoil my overall enjoyment of the movie, and I see the love and the respect that Singer has for the character in this movie, and it's kind of hard to argue against that.
Yeah,
it's hard for me to argue against a guy who has such love and respect for this character, and he wanted to present his version of the movie that he no doubt grew up loving.
Yeah.
That's the best way I could put it. He obviously grew up loving the original Superman movie, and he wanted to make his version of it, which this is. I mean, there's no way of getting around it. This is basically, Superman the movie filtered through his consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
But, I can't find it in my heart not to recommend this movie because of the flaws. Some movies, yes, I can say, don't go see that. But no, for all of its flaws, I cannot, in all good conscience, say, well, you shouldn't see this because Bryan Singer has such love and respect. If there's the major flaw of it is that love and respect and reverence gets in the way of him, what I think, doing his own take on it.
Yeah. And also I like that they had Ava Marie Saint was also she's a very small role as Martha Kent, but I'm glad they gave her they have something to do with Martha in this movie.
Yes, me too.
And do you notice that they had the photo of Glenn Ford, who played was it Glenn Ford who played Pa Kent in the original?
Yeah, Glenn Ford.
And they got his photo framed in the background in her house. I like that.
Glenn Ford.
And
who was only in the movie for about like 2 minutes, but that was the most memorable 2 minutes in any superhero movie.
and actually played a Jonathan Kent as Jonathan Kent is supposed to be played.
Exactly.
Yeah. Not telling him to hide from everything. But yeah, and I also like that. So here's something interesting about this. So General Zod was originally supposed to be in this movie too.
Oh God, I'm so tired of General Zod.
Well, I don't blame you, but they wanted Singer wanted Jude Law to play General Zod, which I think would have been I think Jude Law would have done a great job playing that character, and but Jude Law refused multiple times, and so Singer didn't want anyone other than Jude Law. So after like the third or fourth time he refused, Singer just took the character out of the script.
You know what? General Zod should be like the Joker. It should be like 5 years before we see him in any Superman movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, well, apparently after the movie came out, though, Jude Law saw it and he loved it. And then after that, he's like, "Hey, so can I be in the sequel?" So they were talking about doing a sequel with Brainiac, and Jude Law was probably in the running to play Brainiac in that movie. which would have been, I think would have been a really, because Singer had said like at, everyone says this movie was such a failure, but it was the highest grossing DC movie at the time. It outgrossed Batman Begins.
Warner Brothers, which really amazed me, Warner Brothers said that they were unhappy with how much this movie made. This movie made something like $300 million.
Well, you know what? They changed their minds about it, because at first they said they were happy with the numbers, and then later they said they weren't.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, and again, yeah, like you said, there's a perception this movie was not a flop. It made a lot of damn money.
Made a lot of money. It was the highest grossing DC movie. It made more money than Batman Begins. That's just a fact. And they were going to go ahead with the sequel. It was going to be called Man of Steel. Singer was going to come back to direct it. Brandon Routh was under contract to come back. They were talking to Jude Law about playing Brainiac. And Singer had said at a comic convention, I think it was, and he said, now that we've kind of reestablished Superman being back in the world, the next movie we can go all Wrath of Khan. Like, he wanted to go full out and do a lot more action and spectacle in the next movie, which I think would have been a lot better than the Man of Steel we got.
The problem with Warner Brothers is that, you know what? The movie didn't make as much money as they wanted it to make. They wanted it to make like, I don't know, like $1 billion.
Yeah.
And I mean, once it didn't do that, then they started saying, well, the movie, we wasn't happy with how much. I don't understand how you cannot be happy with a movie that's made you $300 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, I think we would have gotten a much better Man of Steel had Warner Brothers gone ahead with their sequel. There are problems with this movie, just like there are problems with the first X-Men movie, but I think just like with X2, Singer would have hit his stride in a Superman Returns sequel.
Well, yeah, because now he's done established a new status quo, and which is really all this movie is.
Exactly.
It's just a setup for the new status quo.
Yeah.
So once he got that out the way, yeah, we could, because he still had everybody. We still got Lex Luthor out there because we see him at the end of the movie. Him and his girlfriend, they're on an island. They ran out of gas.
Oh, you know what? This is karma coming back on the dog. Because because she says, well, what are we going to eat? And Lex looks at the dog.
And the expression on the dog's, I don't know how they got that expression on the dog's face, but the dog is like, oh shit.
Yeah.
You can see it on the dog's face. He's like, oh shit. Karma's getting ready to bite your ass, Pookie.
And also we see that, I think this movie needs to make clear what exactly happened between Superman and Lois 5 years ago, because she's surprised to see Jason has powers, but you get the sense that she's known all along it was Superman.
Yeah.
And yet she doesn't know that Superman and Clark are the same people. So that makes you wonder, like, the amnesia, if they're going with the amnesia kiss, did it just erase his memory of her memory of him as Superman? And so she still believes that they slept together and all that? Or was it just like, you remember they did the Superman Doomsday animated movie?
Uh-huh.
And it had Superman and Lois in a relationship in that movie, even though Lois didn't know his secret identity. So I wonder if it was something like kind of a similar thing to that, where her and Superman were in a relationship, they slept together, maybe they broke up or something, and then he had to go and find Krypton. So I'm not sure exactly.
Well, you're right about that one thing about Jason. The movie's definitely trying to have his cake and eat it too, because they try to give you the impression, like Lois knows that her son does have superpowers. But then there's other times when, like you said, the thing with the piano, she actually, Well,
I think not that she knows he has superpowers, but that she knows he's Superman's son.
Yeah.
That's
go back. Well, she tells him.
Yeah, and then she tells him when he's in the hospital.
When he's in the hospital, yeah.
And then there's that great scene when Jason is sleeping, and he repeats the lines, the last words his father said to him.
Right, exactly.
Like I love that little that puts that in such great context. The last line: "The son becomes the father, and the father the son."
Right.
That,
And like I said, it sets up the whole thing because Lois sees him leaving and she says, "Oh, you're going to be around, right?" He says, "Yeah, I'll be around." So now you got to think this, okay, where is their relationship going to go now?
Mm-hmm.
Now that he knows he has a son, and what is she going to tell Richard? They still going to have a relationship because you don't really want to see her break up with Richard because damn, the guy risked his life to save her and her kid.
Right.
So,
and
he's an okay dude. He's an okay dude.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
he's a stand-up guy. You don't want to see him get hurt. So it would have been interesting seeing how that would have developed. But you had to do something different other than the whole thing with Superman and Clark being rivals.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing that I do give this movie credit for, that it said, okay, we're going to do something different with this whole Clark and Superman and Lois thing. We're going to actually bring in a real rival,
And it's not going to be a rival who's totally wrong for who's totally bad for Lois, like they did because they did that in Lois and Clark, right? They brought Lex Luthor in as a romantic rival for Clark.
Right.
But that doesn't work as well because Lex Luthor's an evil son of a bitch.
Exactly.
So here it works because Richard is, so in that one you're always rooting for Clark, but in this one you're watching this and you're like, well, you know what? Yeah, Clark's the main character and all, but I kind of like Richard a lot too.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? You're saying to yourself, you know what? If she ends up with Richard, I wouldn't bitch about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wouldn't complain if she ends up with Richard.
Like you said before, they do a good job of showing like these are mature adults involved in this situation.
Exactly.
And they're trying to find a way to navigate through it.
Like I said, this isn't like two high school jocks fighting over the cheerleader. These are all adults. They're mature adults, and they're trying to navigate their way through this sticky situation in an adult manner.
Exactly.
Which I really appreciated. That's an aspect of this movie that I really enjoy, and I really think that they nailed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Now, one of the most contentious scenes in this movie is when Superman goes to Lois and Richard's house and he uses X-ray vision. Like lots of people have bitched about that scene and called it like Super Stalker and all that. What did you think of that scene?
Okay. My feeling is that stalking is something that is done over a sustained period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Superman went because he didn't know what her home life was like with this guy, Richard. Mm-hmm. He didn't know if it was happy, if it was contentious. He was curious. He wanted to know what their life, at home was like. And he looked in and he saw that, the kid was playing and they were making dinner together and, everything looked all right and everything like that. And you notice that once they started talking, because Richard and Lois, once they started getting into this heavy conversation, he turned off his X-ray vision and he flew away.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Me personally, I don't see it as stalking. I do not see that scene as stalking. Superman was scared. Okay. Here's the perfect thing. Everybody talk about, well, Superman, he's not relatable. What is more relatable than a guy who's in love using his superpowers to try to find out, well, is this girlfriend really in love with this other guy?
Yeah. Now, I think I agree with you for the most part. I think the scene's a little problematic looking back on it. And also like the scene when he takes her flying, and when she says, Richard always takes me flying, and he says, not like this, with kind of a smile, and it feels like he's trying to compete in that moment.
Well, of course he is.
Well, yeah, that felt a little
because Richard's taking you flying, but not like this.
Yeah, it felt a little childish for me for a Superman thing to do. But they kind of rectify it when he drops her off, and like we said before, then he pulls away from her. Right. And the scene when he goes to their house, it's a little skeevy, but I agree with you. I think people have made way too much out of it.
Yeah, they made way too much. You know what? It would have been stalkerish if they had been in bed together and he's watching them.
Yeah,
that would have been. Yeah, that would have been downright perverted. But no, he did. they're in the kitchen, like I said.
Or even if they were kissing, if they were kissing and he's just standing there watching,
right,
that would have been creepy as well.
Exactly.
But when they're just having this conversation, and it's not so, and the thing he seems most interested in is, how does she really feel about me? Like,
I think that he's just trying to get a feel of, is this a real relationship? Is she really in love with this guy?
Yeah.
Is she really going out with him? Is she really going to take him home tonight?
Yeah.
That's what I really think. That he's just trying to get he's trying to get a handle on how serious this relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? And I think it's kind of touching that Superman is not above using his superpowers to try, It just shows he's as human as the rest of us.
Yeah.
That, he says, okay, well, you know what? I know I'm not supposed to do, but just this one time, I'm not, And like I said, once the conversation starts to get like kind of heavy and go in another direction, he turns off he's okay, that's enough. I done heard enough. And he flies off.
Yeah.
You know what? Okay, let me put it this way, because I tried to be objective, and I see where people would have a problem with this. But for me personally, I think A, they're overthinking it, and B, they're reading too much into it.
Yeah, I agree with me. I agree with all that. Yeah. Okay, so any final words on Superman Returns?
I think it's a good movie. I do. I think it's a good movie. It's got a lot, and you good people have been listening to me and my good friend go on for the past 2.5 hours, which is how long the movie is. It's got its problems, but it's a good Superman movie. Yeah, it is. I mean, you know what? I was asking on the Superhero Cinephile group. I usually put 2 movies together and ask the members of the group, well, you like this one or do you like this one? And I had Superman Returns or Man of Steel. If I had a choice between this one or Man of Steel, I'm always going to pick this one.
Same here. Every single time.
I'm always going to pick this one.
Yeah. I would pick Superman Returns over Man of Steel every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Yeah.
To me, this is, you know what? Because to me, this feels more like a Superman movie.
Right.
Man of Steel, yes, it is a Superman movie, but you know what? It's for a certain type of person who sees Superman a different way than I do. Let me put it this way. I'm not knocking the movie. If you're a fan of that movie, please don't think I'm knocking it. If you love it, if you enjoy it, believe me, I'm glad for you. You should love what you love. But that's a movie. But yeah, like I said, I feel that Man of Steel is made for fans of Superman who think of the character in a different way than I do. I will always admit that I always see the character as being like in the mode of Christopher Reeve. To me, that's my Superman. Now, if Man of Steel, if that's your Superman, God bless, you enjoy. But I don't see him that way.
I'm going to come out and say, like, I am knocking Man of Steel. Because it's just, I hate this trend where all superheroes, like, I love dark and gritty superheroes, right? We talked before, like, I think The Dark Knight's a great movie. You got a different opinion of The Dark Knight. You don't think as much of it as I do. But I even though it's got some issues as a Batman, like, I still love that movie. I still love the Tim Burton really dark and gritty Batman stuff. I love dark and gritty superheroes. Like, I love The Punisher. But I think I also love, like, the bright and optimistic superheroes like Superman, like Captain America. There's a place for both. They don't all have to be the same. And I feel that Man of Steel does to Superman, and Snyder's movies did to the DC characters what the comics industry was doing to these icons back in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. When they had to make everything dark and gritty, and everyone had to be wearing like massive shoulder pads and had to be roughed up and all this kind of stuff. Like Batman had to be replaced by a guy who who wore a big suit of armor and and killed criminals, and Superman had to go and he had to execute General Zod and the Kryptonians when they were powerless and all this kind of stuff. Like it was unnecessary, is what they were doing to those characters, and it again, going back to Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns, it took the wrong lessons from those comics and said, well, now we got to do this to all our heroes. And that's, to me, is what Snyder's movies did to the DC characters.
You know what's the best part of the Man of Steel?
What's that?
Remember the first 20 minutes of the movie?
Yes. The first 20 minutes are everything up until the point, like right after his the first time flying.
I'm talking about the Krypton part.
The Krypton part was good too. Yeah.
I could have seen a whole movie set on Krypton.
Yeah, the Krypton stuff was great. He made it feel like a lived-in alien world. That was great.
Matter of fact, that's the first time on screen I've ever seen a Krypton that made me say, son, that'd be a pretty cool place to hang out at.
Right, and then right up until, but the movie as a whole, like with the exception of the stuff with Jonathan, but the first part of that movie, when he puts on the suit for the first time and he tries flying, and like you see like the joy in Henry and Cavill's face, up until that point, the movie is fine. The only quibble I have is with the scene when Jonathan tells him maybe you should have let those kids die.
Right.
That's the only quibble I've got with it, because if I'm remembering the timeline of the movie correctly, Jonathan, they don't actually show how Jonathan dies until after he first flies as Superman. So, like, up until that point, everything works great. But then after that, he goes back to Smallville. He sees Lois there, and he tells her the story of how his dad died. And from then on, it's just a complete downward trajectory. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Listen, we're going to need another 2.5 hours just to talk about Man of Steel whenever we get up to that.
Yeah.
Know what? That's a movie with its own set of issues that I am not qualified.
Yeah.
Or prepared to deal with.
Yeah. All right. So we got to get out of here now. We've been ranting for too long. I just saw your message. Oh, you just sent it right now. So okay. But yeah. So we got to wrap up now. So just to say that next week for my pick, I thought with all this stuff going on with the unidentified, stormtroopers going into Portland and all this, and just like all the lawlessness and like the authoritarian tendencies, I thought this would be a good time to go back and look at V for Vendetta.
Oh, okay.
I figured this movie is very timely right now.
Yeah. I haven't seen that movie. Oh my God, I don't know how long.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it in ages. Yeah, but yeah, V for that definitely is the movie for our time.
Exactly. Yeah. So join us next week. We'll be talking about V for Vendetta. In the meantime, head on over to the group Superhero Cinephiles on Facebook. Join in the discussion. You can toss us a few bucks through our website, superherocinephiles.com. Donate through the PayPal button, and we will see you next time when we're talking about V for Vendetta.
Okay. Thank you for listening as always. Good night. God bless. Stay safe out there, and be good to each other. Watch some good movies and read some good books, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, and make sure to wear a mask.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, or if you have a superhero movie or TV show you'd like us to cover in a future episode, you can email us at superherocinephiles@gmail.com, or you can also visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com. If you like what you hear, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Each review helps us reach more potential listeners. You can also support the show by renting or purchasing the movies discussed, or by picking up our books, all of which can be accessed through the website, as well as find links to our social media presences. The The theme music for this show is a shortened version of Superhero Showdown, a royalty-free piece of music courtesy of BesleonStudios.com.